Hello, adventurer. Welcome to Solace. Why, yes, we do build our homes in the boughs of this mighty Vallenwood trees. It's quite a view up there during the sunset, I can tell you that. But enough chatter. You look like you've came a long way, adventurer. If you're looking to spend the night and rest, you can do no better than the inn of the last home with a hearty serving of Otik's spiced potatoes. Famed throughout all of Krynn. Wait, you never heard of Otik's spiced potatoes? That can be. Surely you know of the Inn of the Last Home. It is the meeting spot for the heroes of the lands. The one they gathered about before they became famous and ended the War of the Lands, saving us from the Dark Queen herself. Why, two of them run the inn now, Caramon and Tika Majere. Yes, that Majere. He has a twin, you know, Raistlin. Ah, I see. I don't have to tell you who he is. A dark sort he is. And, well, just a meaner of a man compared to his brother, if you want my opinion. But don't tell that to Caramon, not to his face. He loves his brother dearly, and he'd be liable to toss you out of the inn for the insult. And you wouldn't want to be falling off those trees at that height. He's still mighty strong, he is. Although getting a little bit punchy around the middle, if you know what I mean. Well, yes, I know Raistlin is a powerful mage and he did a lot for the war and all that, but he wears the black and you know, look, come closer. Let me whisper this in your ear. He's got no qualms about killing his own brother. And Caramon's seen him do it too with his own eyes. What? Oh yes, of course Caramon wouldn't be here if his brother actually did kill him. No, it was some sort of a test. Some kind of illusions those wizards get up to at the Tower of Weirith past that accursed forest. Only to my mind, it wasn't just Raistlin that went through something rough. Caramon did too. A test of the twins. I say, that has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Anyway, was Parsalian, head of the White Robes that summoned Raistlin to the tower. He's got talent for sorcery when all's said and done ever since he was a wee little lad. The wizard order don't take too kindly to powerful mages that weren't part of the order, and Parsalian wanted Raistlin to undergo them wizardly trials to earn his colored robes. His brother went with him, of course, to guard him. He would follow Raistlin to the abyss itself, would Caramon. Shame that they forced Caramon to wait while his twin underwent the test. I've only heard rumors, mine, but I heard there was some sort of mighty sorcerer's struggle with dark elves and whatnot. At the end, Parsalian conjured up some kind of illusion that tricked Raistlin into thinking Caramon is something he's not, and Raistlin killed Caramon. The illusion, anyhow, burnt him to a crisp, and poor Caramon's forced to watch it all. Learned something about that evil brother of his that day, did Caramon. Dark thing that was. Raistlin was a sickly sort even before he took the test, but after, he just became cursed. Coughing all the time with the skin the color no man should have, and those eyes, makes my spine tingle just thinking of those hourglass eyes and the dead gaze. I swear when he looks at you, it's like he was looking at some sort of corpse. Sent chills all over me, I tell you. All mages are trouble if you ask me. Can't trust any of them. I hope Caramon sets his son Palin straight. Boy is taking after his uncle more than his own sire. You want to know more about the test? Look, do I look like some sort of wizard to you? Ask Caramon. He might tell you about the story, about the time when he and his brother went to Weirith if you ply him with enough ale. Maybe. Do I have a quest for you? Look, do you think I'm just standing around here at the entrance of the village waiting for an adventurer like you to give you a quest? You're not knocked on the head, are you? Go to the inn. Maybe Caramon has a job for you or something. I hear them wizards at the tower summoning Palin for an audience, and he might be needing a guard or two. And that, my friends, is how we are going to start off this.
I roll for insight to see whether or not the tavern keeper is lying to me.
All right. Well, before I hope our audience enjoyed that little skit. Before we start off the actual story, talking about the actual story, and I hand it off to my co-host. Just a note, there are actually two stories called The Test of the Twins, and we're doing the short story from a collection called The Magic of Krynn. The other Test of the Twins is a full-length novel, part of a trilogy, second book. So it makes no sense for us to be doing that, to be honest. So, and with that out of the way, I shall hand it over to my co-hosts Nikita Zuev and Robert Gibson before I put my take on the table. Nikki, will you do it on this?
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, so the Tale of the Twins, the short story is short, to say the least. It's about 8 A4 pages. Um, it's it gets to the point quite quickly. I think it has a very intriguing beginning with the brothers on their journey towards the destination, and then it goes into the explanation of what they're doing there and why, and really specifically the mage, what he's there for and what he wants to do. And it gives good characteristics of the both. I wouldn't call them both main protagonists because it's really about the mage, right? It's really about him. It's not really about Cameron. He's kind of there to be a set piece and to act as a main. I wouldn't call it object, I say, but main conundrum of the story. He is the dilemma. Let's put it that way. So he doesn't have that much character besides being a great brother, and we should kind of feel bad that he has this frail individual who is not sure of himself and therefore poisons this relationship with him. Right. That's kind of the vehicle of the plot proper. And the plot itself is fine. I think it suffers from the fact that it is only 8 pages. I think if it was given a lot more room to breathe and we could ruminate on these ideas and maybe hear a little bit more about the interesting stuff, like what does a mage do to learn these spells? What kind of rituals they have to go through. What are these trials? What do they look like? We get a glimpse of the last one, sort of, but we don't really, right? It's only the very, very end of it, right? Which is the main, it's the last test serves the main conflict of the story, which is the jealousy of the mage towards his handsome fighter twin. And I think that's kind of if I were to have to summarize this, um, great idea, could work on the execution a little bit, could give more information, could work on pacing. Otherwise, the story itself was intriguing, and it was interesting to read. And the fact that it was only 8 pages made these issues that I had disappear quite quickly because it was a one and done. I literally read it in about 25 minutes.
Hmm.
There you go. Those are my initial thoughts on the tab, but I'm sure we can discuss some more stuff. Robert, would you like to pick up the torch?
Yes, it's certainly primarily a character study, and interestingly, it's such a strong character study that the main character, Raistlin, doesn't actually even have to be there on page, I think it's page 3, when they're arguing about him. Parsalian and Raistlin's master are arguing about him. And I found that one of the most compulsively readable bits of the story, actually, even before you got to the actual test itself. Um, I thought that the length of the story wasn't a problem. I thought it was about the right length for the punchy theme that it puts over, which is the the test that makes you think you've done something terrible, whereas in fact you haven't. That's very well done. I would like to know more about the author. I'm afraid I didn't do any homework about the author. And maybe one of my co-hosts could say something about that. And if there are other stories set in the same universe, I bet there are. It's just crying out for further development. Just to pay the story another compliment, it's not the sort of thing I normally enjoy reading all that much, and the fact that I did is quite a plus factor. I tend to think that stories about majors are rather too open-ended, although I'm a great Tolkien fan, but Tolkien's work is grounded in ordinary folk, really, and he builds it up into the extraordinary from the ordinary, whereas this plunges you straight into an intense tale of quite high up, quite heavy majory, but it works. So that's good. All right, those are my initial thoughts.
Cool. I think I might have neglected to mention to the readers, the audience, that this is Am I right in saying that this is the first time you have delved into Dragonlance, Nikki?
This is definitely the first time.
Right. And it's obviously the first time for Rob as well. Okay, so to give some context, Dragonlance, which this story is set in, is a module from TSR in the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. It is one of several. You have Forgotten Realms, and then you have Eberron, and then you have a whole bunch of other stuff. The author of this story, Ravenloft is amazing. Anyway, so the author of this story, Margaret Weis, is one half of the duo that essentially started the ball rolling on Dragonlance itself. So this short story is right smack in the middle of it all. So it's no wonder that my co-hosts are a little bit lost on some of the stuff. It is this is a prelude of sorts. Before this short story started, there's an actual story that started it off, the Chronicles trilogy, which is the one that details the War of the Lands that I mentioned in my little intro right at the beginning. And then there is following that, Raistlin and Caramon and Majere are the most popular characters out of the 8 that went to do their Dragonlance thingy. And the follow-up to the Chronicles trilogy was another trilogy solely on the 2 brothers. And this is a prelude of sorts. There are a lot of stories written about Caramon and Raistlin Majere and their relationship together. But that's just for context. Going back to what I think of the story itself. So it's been a long time since I last read anything from those D&D based novels like Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance. And when I revisited it, reading this short story, I was quite taken aback by how much maturity there is in the stories. Because when I was a boy and I was reading this, it was just all adventure stories to me. You know, the people are just smashing each other up with swords and armors, and then there are dragons, and then there are blah blah blah. They breathe fire, and you know they cast magic, and stuff like that. Going back to reread this, I was actually quite surprised at how much depth they went into between the relationship between Raistlin and Caramon. It was just not evident to me when I read it the first time. And it was like this rereading as an adult gave me a much deeper appreciation of the story, because typically when I go back to, I'll raise an example. Magician The Apprentice by Raymond E. Weis. When I was a boy, I devoured that book. Like I read it all in one setting. Then when I went back and reread it as an adult, I found it's actually kind of shallow. I was like, yeah, it's a nice adventure story, but it's just there. There wasn't this depth of characterization. This character study buried within all this I would say they at its roots they are still very much young boys adventure story, but it's just that I was not expecting to find this depth when I go back to reread this stuff. Yeah. And well, it just brought back a heavy dose of nostalgia for me, and then I went and reread a whole bunch of other stuff. I think I shall at some point go back to Chronicles and go back to Legends, which is the trilogy all about the twins. Yeah. Anyway, also to further answer some questions, the points that Nikki has raised about rituals of the magic and stuff like that. Again, that's it's because you're being thrown into the deep end of the ocean, so you missed a whole bunch of it.
Explanation.
A lot of that is covered in Chronicles, and then it goes into extensive depth in Legends. My one complaint about the story is I think so there is a bit of a lore inconsistency here in this particular story, because I'm going to forbear on mentioning what the inconsistency is, but there is one very important figure that is missing in this story that is crucial to Raistlin's development. So I shan't talk about him until more is revealed, as maybe if we read more of the stories from Dragonlance. But I think that is my only complaint. And the rituals for casting magic is very D&D. There are spell components, and then there are magic chants, and you can see you will read a little bit of that in the illusion towards the end when Caramon started casting spells. The Ember Rod with the rabbit fur, that's lightning bolt. If Nikki is familiar with that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, when his brother started taking out the stuff to cast lightning bolt, I was like, all right, so this is an illusion.
Yeah, and I think it is to the credit of the author that Raistlin is supposed to be a really smart guy. It should be it should, like Pa Salian said, it should be absolutely evident that his brother can't cast spells, but his jealousy and envy. I mean, he went to he arrived at the wrong right answer, but through a different way. And being a smart guy, he should have seen that, but it was his jealousy and envy of his brother that allowed him to pass the test, so to speak, and killed the illusion, and while his brother is watching. So that's a bit of a
Heavy stuff.
heavy stuff for the brother to be witnessing, I imagine. Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say. I don't want to keep going on. Anything else from you guys?
Yeah, so for me, one of the scenes that Robert just mentioned when he was giving his feedback, I really enjoyed that whole sequence where Raistlin cast sleep on the servant and sort of listened into something he wasn't supposed to be a part of. Very D&D. Players do this stuff all the time, and then they get caught and they have to face consequences, and they're like, oh, but nobody got hurt. You're like, yeah, you put a person to sleep. Like, this is a criminal offense, no matter the way you look at it, right? But sometimes people get away with it, so that was a fun thing to see. I think the council itself, the what's it called, the wizards, the mystery of the wizards that have summoned them at the beginning was really intriguing to me. I wish there was a bit more done with it, but understanding now the background that you've given us, XJ, this isn't written for me. This isn't written for the newcomer. This is written for somebody who is like, oh yeah, we get to see the origin of these two twins, da da da, right? So fair enough. That's why that wasn't really fleshed out. I get it, right? So it's actually quite hard.
I should just interject here. So this whole story, right, was written off a actual playthrough. Like there were a bunch of people gathered around. They played the campaign, and the story is born out of from there. One day we shall talk about. One day, hopefully, we can we can find out more about the people who actually sit down and played the campaign. But the character of Raistlin, who by far is the most popular character in this whole set of stories, was born out of one player. Yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
No problem. Yeah. So in that vein, and that is a very interesting point, and I'm sure Robert has a few questions bearing that, because he is the individual who is the least familiar with D&D, I think. But for me personally, realizing that the audience that this was written for answers a lot of the questions and deliberately undermines a lot of the criticisms that I would have had for the story. But knowing that it comes from a compilation of other works all in the same universe after a really popular trilogy has come out, I think I would have a very different experience reading this if I was a fan who would have picked up that anthology, right? I don't think you would have picked that up as somebody who's not familiar at all, such as myself when I read the story. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, you've partly answered my question I was going to ask, which is, what do you reckon is the chances of this story being readable by a non-genre reader? And I think it's fairly good. It's still harder to understand than it would be for an expert in your field. But even so, you can say that about almost any kind of story, I suppose. We think of genres, but in a way, there are very few stories that aren't in some sort of genre or other. Even the kind of story that wins the Booker Prize is sort of it's a kind of type of story. Kind of mainstream is a genre, really. I don't know if I'm expressing myself well, but in this particular story, there are a couple of places where I've got some queries about the actual text, but I don't know if this is the right place to bring them up. I should have really brought them up before the podcast. Places where I'm actually not sure of the meaning, but this is probably some sort of detail which the viewers maybe aren't going to be interested in, and it
I would
may.
be happy to answer if you have questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. On page 3, about the middle of page 3, sort of the 9th paragraph of page 3, I'll quote the actual words. But at night, the words may prove fatal, haunted his dreams. And that seems to have some words missing from that sentence. I could understand it if it said, but at night, the words which might have proved fatal haunted his dreams. But I'm not sure if that was the right meaning. Certainly, the words may prove fatal haunted his dreams doesn't really make sense.
So the tests that these majors go through when they go to get their full accolades is very dangerous, and sometimes it will kill the test taker. And I do believe those words refer to just basically Raistlin was thinking about the consequences if he should fail the test. Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that tells me how to amend it. Instead of the word may, it should be which might. But at night, the words which might prove fatal haunted his dreams. So that's how to correct that one.
Right. Any other queries, Margaret Weis? You can talk to Robert Gibson. He'll fix your work.
Free of charge.
There's a worse one on page 5, which makes me. Well, I don't know if it is worse. It might just be that I've missed something. I'll quote: Raistlin dragged himself away from the body of the dark elf. Now, what's the dark elf? What does that mean?
So we
Go ahead,
we missed the most epic part of the tale. Basically, what it's saying is like, okay, so this trial is over. He killed some dark elf, and now he's getting up. That's the way I read that.
That is absolutely right. That's part of the law inconsistency that I was complaining about earlier. I think the reason why it was skipped over is because of this this really important part, this really important detail that they probably don't. Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, who is the other half of the duo, probably did not want to spoil that here. That's why they skipped over it. But the test is basically a sorcerous struggle between Raistlin and a couple of dark elves. Dark elves in this world are basically, elves, but they're evil. And yeah, right? So surprising, the name. So dark elves are basically elves who decided to, who through their own decisions and nature turn their backs on their heritage. In Dragonlance, elves are mostly concentrated in 2 areas: Sylvanesti and Qualinestes. Qualinestes are forest elves, and I can't remember what Sylvanestes are, but they are basically elves that turn their back on those heritage and just went evil, and Raistlin's task was to kill not just one actually. There's like 3 of them, but it's not again it's skipped over in this particular story. And you're right, that is the most juicy part of the story, Nikki, and they skipped over it for you.
Yeah. My opinion will be reflected in my score.
Any other questions, Rob?
No, you've explained it all very well. Thanks.
I should also give a little bit more context about the time in which this is taking place. So this is before the War of the Lands that I talked about in my intro. During this time, all the gods have basically left Krynn. This is after a very catastrophic event called the Cataclysm, hundreds and hundreds of years before this. And so the gods have left Krynn, left men to their own devices, and there are no clerical magic to be found in all of Krynn. And the only source of magic are the magic users, the wizards, and they are all viewed very suspiciously by the populace. And so in some way this test and stuff like that, yes, it's a bit of a status thing, and then it confers some kind of a difference to mages that have passed the test, as it's written in the story itself. But also it is to control, put a collar, if you will, on mages, so they don't get pitchforked, so to speak. Yeah. Righto. Well, are there any other things that we want to go through?
I don't have anything to say, besides the fact that I think I would be interested in seeing where this is going, but I feel like the next Dragonlance short story, I wish that it would have more context for itself, because this one kind of feels like it's written for people who understand what's going on.
All right. Well, we hopefully this would be it would be the start of many, because I am very, very surprised by how much I like this story, actually, after decades of having left D&D adventure stories behind me. So very pleasant surprise. Well, yeah, so your final scores?
Robert, would you do the honors?
Maybe a 6. Maybe a 6. That's quite a reasonable score, I think.
All right. If I was a person who was coming into this knowing what's going on, I would give it a higher score. But as of such, especially the whole dark elf thing really irks me, so I think I would give it a 4 out of 10. If I was just given this and told, yeah, read this, I'd be like, yeah, but what? Okay, so the main action of the story is not there? Okay. Put it back on the pile of the works I've written, and I don't know, go back to doing some work. I wouldn't have that much to say about it. But knowing all the context, I think I would give it a much higher score. because then I would be like, oh, this is the moment when X and Y do ZLF. Whoa, that's mind blowing. But that wasn't the experience for me. For me, it was just two twins having a really bad time in a fantasy world. There we go.
Yeah. For me, I would give it a 8.5. Primarily because I am very surprised by the maturity of the story. Going back to it, I was expecting a very shallow, honestly, a very shallow story, like a lot of the D&D novels that I revisit after years have gone by. This one is just different. It's just like there's a lot more invested in it, and to be so this story is actually, I would classify it, just to further give context that nobody asked for. This short story is actually a shall I call it a summary of all the little tidbits that were sprinkled throughout 6 books. The first 3, the Chronicles and then Legends, all 6 of them into one 8-page long book, because the throughout the travels, throughout the travels of the companions, and throughout the story of the 2 twins, all little hints of this test came out, because the test takes place before the companions met in the inn and did their thing. So this is all just like, this is like concentrated into one short story, so people don't have to keep flipping pages, I suppose. Also, I should say that there are 8, the companions that I keep referring to. There are 8 of them. Raistlin and Caramon makes 2. There's a half elf called Tennis. Thief, Akenda. Thief, Akenda is basically like Frodo and Bilbo and Sam. They're that. Akenda called Tasselhoof Barefoot. A dwarf called Flint Fireforge. A barmaid called Tika. 2 barbarians called River, Wind, and Gold Moon. And
Wait, they have 2 barbarians? Okay, now I'm interested.
they're not your typical barbarians, actually.
All right, never mind, skip.
And then I think later on there was Stump Bright Blade. How can I forget that guy? Yeah, those are the 8. All right, man.
Nice.
I guess we have came to the natural conclusion of this particular episode. And if the audience enjoyed this discussion, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in more Dragonlance discussion, maybe next time we will have another one. Until then, take care and bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Sure.